1.21 gigawatts. Great God!
Shall we play a game?
Would you like a jelly baby?
Engage auto systems.
Aye. Engaged.
Clear all moorings.
Cleared, sir.
1/4 impulse power.
You know how to fly, don't you?
No. Do you?
You shall not pass!
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
Down here, it's our time. It's our time down here.
The Force will be with you, always.
Hi, and welcome to the Geek Hangout podcast. My name is Mark, and I am joined tonight, as always, by my very good friend and co-host, Grant. How you doing tonight, Grant?
Hey, Mark. Hey, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the Geek Hangout podcast. This is episode, 64? 63?
Yeah, it's 64. We're 64.
Okay. Yeah. I always think to look look it up beforehand, and then I forget. So anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in. We got a big Star Wars show for you tonight. We got, our initial thoughts on Obi Wan episodes 1 and 2. And then, of course,
I'm the slacker here. Grant's caught up. I'm not caught up. It dropped today. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet.
So we'll just cover the first two, and then of course over the weekend with Star Wars Celebration and all kinds of news and information, and Star Wars goodness dropped. So we're going to give a rundown of all that stuff. So we usually like to start out with what we're doing, but so we have a lot to get through tonight, so we're going to jump right into it. I guess we'll jump right in and say we'll start with Obi Wan Kenobi.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. And we'll say throw it to you, and I'm going to say, what did you think of the first two episodes?
I'm in love with the show already, right? Like I think it's so far I love it. I mean, I love seeing Ewan again as Obi Wan Kenobi. I think it's perfect, and I'll tell you, like one of the things I noticed about this series as compared to the other Star Wars series we've seen, is that this one really feels more to me like a movie. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's like not that I'm not any disrespect to Mandalorian, because it was fantastic, but this really feels almost like it has a cinematic quality to it that the others did not have.
Right?
And so I'm totally into it. I love it so far.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing about it. I don't know if it's shot differently, or if it's just because it's dealing with Obi Wan Kenobi, and you know what I mean. I don't know if it's the visuals or more the gravitas of it, to where it's like you're dealing with Obi Wan Kenobi, and spoilers, but full spoilers by the way. But
yes, full spoilers.
Yeah, episode 2, you get young Princess Leia's running around, and it's just like what you didn't. We thought that might happen, and I was
going to say I'm going to give us some props on that, because we called that a while ago. We were like, well, what would bring him off planet?
Right. And I'm so glad it went that way, because it made perfect sense. And it was totally logical, and it was rather delightful. I mean, like the girl playing young Leia was great, and she was cracking me up.
Yeah,
she's like all sassy.
Yeah, yeah, I really like it, and it had to be something big to pull him out off of Tatooine, and I think Leia is perfect, and I like that one Inquisitor, Reva, I guess her name was basically using her as bait. So I just think it's so far I love it. And I'm really looking forward to seeing episode 3, which dropped today, but I just haven't gotten a chance to see it before we could record. But
and I'll say that episode 3 is well worth it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay.
But sticking with 1 and 2, I liked I just lost my train of thought. We got the trailer playing here, so I right away something else popped in my head.
Yeah.
But darn it, what was I going to say about something about Leia? I can't remember now. Oh well. Well, that's going to bother me. I'm going to have to edit this part out.
Okay. It was cool to see Jimmy Smits back as Leia's father.
Yeah,
it was cool to see Alderaan, not an asteroid field, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that was really neat.
Because other than that brief thing at the end of Revenge of the Sith, we've never seen Alderaan before,
right?
So yeah, that was fun to see. I liked seeing what Obi-Wan was doing on Tatooine. Like they really you really got the sense that this guy's broken, and he's harvesting some big fish beast or whatever he's doing.
Right.
But he's working for someone, and he's stealing scraps for his space donkey, and
yeah. Yeah, it was. I just loved what they did with him. Like that, he's just this kind of bitter guy, and there was that really cool moment when the Jedi came to help, to him for help, and he's what should we do? And he's like, dude, just drift away.
Yeah, he's like, it's over. We lost. I thought that was really good. I remember what I was going to say earlier is about Reva, the Inquisitor. I'm interested in her because she seems to really have it out for Obi Wan Kenobi, and so much so that you're well, spoilers again, but at the end of episode 2, she says that Anakin Skywalker is still alive.
Yes.
And I'm kind of whoa, I didn't realize that was, I always got the impression that nobody really knew that Anakin became Darth Vader.
What I figured Obi-Wan knew, Yoda knew, and the Emperor knew.
Right.
And everybody just assumed Anakin was killed in the Purge. That's what I assumed.
Right. So when she when she says it, obviously Obi-Wan didn't realize yet, which I thought was interesting. Because we were I think in one of our previous podcasts, we were saying, well, when does Obi-Wan, it never really occurred to me. When did he figure out that Anakin wasn't dead? Because when he left, he thought he'd burn up and died. Or maybe he wasn't quite sure, but he couldn't bring himself to kill him, which is also an interesting take on that scene too. But I'm like, well, who's this Reva? How does she know this information about Darth Vader and Anakin? And so there's a lot more to her that I think we'll find out. And then one of the bigger surprises, she offs the Grand Inquisitor, sticks him with a lightsaber, and I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Because
he's supposed to go on and appear in Rebels,
but maybe so maybe that's why. Because that was my thought. I was like, well, I thought he was the Grand Inquisitor. I thought that was the Grand Inquisitor from Rebels, and I know everybody was complaining early on when they saw him that he didn't look right.
Right.
Well, maybe that's gonna explain why he doesn't look right. Maybe the Grand Inquisitor Rebels is a clone or something.
It's funny that you say that, because I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, wow, I guess it's just going to be a different guy, a different, happens to look the same, but it'll be a different alien, different Grand Inquisitor. And then I thought, I'm like, what if he's a clone? Wouldn't that be interesting? And if they could tie all that in with this is kind of way early from the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda and all that, but I'm like, what if they were already experimenting with cloning Force users and all that back then? I wonder if they're going to try to tie that in somehow.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking, but I don't know. There's a lot of questions about Reva that I'm curious to find out. It seems like she's really trying to impress Darth Vader. By bringing in Obi-Wan. So, that was kind of her plan all along. It sounds like they didn't really care about Leia in enough.
Right. They had no idea, inadvertently, she had no idea. It sounds like it was just more we're going to do this and lure Obi-Wan out. But meanwhile, you're like, if you only knew what you had there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what else did I wanted to bring up? Oh, the thing I really noticed, is, or I guess it's more of a question: is Obi-Wan? Has he shut himself off from the Force like Luke did?
I thought the same thing, and I'm not sure
because there's that one scene where he calls out to Qui-Gon, which would suggest that he's not.
Right.
But then, like, the thing that really caught my eye was when Leia falls off the building.
Right.
And he uses, it's like the first time we see him use the Force in the show.
Right.
And it's almost like when I saw him do that, it's almost like even he's surprised that he's still like, I mean, it's like, that he can still do it almost, like, I don't know. I mean, that's because that was what I took from that moment when in the show, and maybe I misread or whatever, but that's what it seemed like to me, is that like even he was surprised he could still do it. You know,
I kind of read it the same way. Because I was thinking as it was going along, and they made that was very dramatic when he saves her and all that stuff. But I'm like, oh, I guess he really hasn't been using the Force all this time.
Yeah,
and it's almost like he had to bust out the cobwebs, you know what I mean, and try to be really focus on it. But yeah, I mean, I guess maybe either, whereas our understanding is Luke did it on purpose. He was like, I'm out,
Yeah.
Whereas Obi-Wan maybe. Not as much, not as consciously as Lucas did it. Maybe he was just more like so beaten and broken that he's like, he just kind of let it slip away type of thing.
Yeah.
And so when he tries to contact Qui-Gon, it's not going to work because he's not like, in tune with the Force type thing.
Okay.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Because one of the things, and it didn't bug me, but one of the things that I always thought was interesting is the one scene when he goes in and Leia's there and she's like got the hood overhead and he takes it off and it's a dummy. Right.
Yeah.
Right when he goes to rescue her, I thought, like, well, why would Obi-Wan sense that that's not really her? Because that seems like something that a Jedi would be able to figure out, And then, like in a later scene before he finds her again, he kind of goes near one of the doors and kind of puts his hand up like he's trying to sense something. So I was kind of like, I'm like, well, wait, is that just just continuity wise, is that just something that didn't work out right? Or I'm like, or is it just he's just not that in tune and maybe he's starting to try to use the Force a little bit to find her.
Yeah.
Kind of want to go back and look at those again, just out of curiosity to see like how they were playing with that.
Well, a friend of mine even pointed out that even on Tatooine, when he goes into his like cave, he's got that little droid sensor saying if somebody's in there or not, right? Like he can't feel that. That's
right. He's not sensing anybody, right?
Right. So I just thought that was, like,
that's a good point too, right?
Yeah. So I was like, all right, yeah. I mean, I think is he like and it's like you're saying, like I feel like it's more like what you're saying, like he's not like Luke. Like Luke didn't just say, okay, I'm done with this. I'm not doing this anymore, and he went off. I think he's just lost it.
Yes, I think that's the best way to say
because
it.
He's not using it.
Right. Right. He's lost it, and he's lost his connection. Right. Whereas Luke severed his connection with the Force. Obi-Wan lost it basically because of his failures, and he's that's interesting. That's interesting.
And plus, he's afraid to use it because if he uses it, then it might. Vader might pick up on. Well, he didn't know Vader was still out there, but like the Inquisitors are still out there.
I guess he before the show starts, I guess he must be somewhat aware of they're hunting Force users. I mean, he knows they're still hunting Jedi. So after 10 years, you don't know where he's really at, type of thing. But yes, he's obviously not using it all. I would. It's probably open to interpretation unless we find out more. But yeah, I bet you it's one of those things where it's like he probably started out just hiding his abilities, and then gradually, as kind of like the weight of the world came down on him, he just stopped using them. It was just So, but I just really well done. I was talking with a friend of mine, and one of the things that made me laugh is I said, and I think I said, may have even said it on this podcast, I can't remember, but I was saying, like, with this show, I'm like, who on earth thought I would be nostalgic for the prequels?
Yeah,
You know?
right, right.
And yeah, because our generation, we when they came out, we were less than enthusiastic for them, and now I'm watching this and I'm like, oh man, like at the beginning of episode 1, they did that whole recap of the prequels, and I'm like, man, this is great.
Yeah, right.
And so you're like, the story was there, you know what I mean? Like, we may not have cared for the execution over the years or whatever like that, but time has softened all that as well.
Well, and we've always said, or at least I've always said, that the best part of the prequels is Obi Wan Kenobi. Like
right.
that is for me. That was always. It was always for me. It was always the redeeming quality of the films. Right. Like I didn't love the whole relationship between Padme and Anakin, or you can like there were issues here and there. You could argue.
Yeah.
I know people complain about the CGI. I don't care about that so much, but like there were issues with those films. They didn't quite turn out the way we wanted. But for me, the one redeeming quality that they always had was that the stuff that with Ewan McGregor in it was really good. Like that's for me, that's what saved those movies.
Yeah. Because I know I've said before that I almost wish that he had been like the true main character, and had everything else be a little bit more ancillary to him. Whereas like the way it was presented, like him and Anakin were equals, and I'm like, well, I get it, but I would have rather, I think, focused more on, he should have been our through line, maybe more so than Anakin type of thing,
Yeah.
But, but this is great. And I mean, it's funny. I mean, I know that, there was talk about doing an Obi-Wan movie, but it and then it turned into the series, but like this era is just so, especially this show, it's just so ripe for like, you didn't even, kind of like we said, you're like, oh, Obi-Wan goes and hides in the desert. That's headcanon, that's it. But now that you're seeing the show, you're like, oh my God, there's like so much here for them to actually like unpack and talk about. And like, it's kind of fascinating just seeing, Obi-Wan at this point in his life, and how the galaxy's operating, what's going on, like the Inquisitors and all this stuff. It's neat.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think this is new information. Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe we got some of this in Rebels, but did we know that some of the Inquisitors were Jedi? Did we know that was a thing?
Yes. And in Rebels, we did find out that the Grand Inquisitor from that show, we found out that Grand Inquisitor used to be a Jedi Temple guard.
A guard, right.
Yes. Yeah. And so, they show that at one point in there, and then you're like, oh, okay. As a matter of fact, what's interesting is the first episode, Obi-Wan, after the recap, starts during Order 66, and as the camera kind of comes over and pulls in, there's a group of younglings there, and one of them is a darker skinned female youngling, and they never call her by name or anything, but as soon as we were introduced to Reva later, and kind of when I saw her initially, because we had been seeing Reva in the promo materials, I was like, oh, is that a young Reva? Did she start out in the temple, and maybe like we're talking about her motivations.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's why she's mad at Obi-Wan.
I'm almost certain that's going to be the case, because why would they show that? Right. Like they had already done the recap. Like, why would you show that scene first?
Right.
Unless something happens in that scene affects the rest of the show. Right.
Yeah, there's got to be a payoff for that. Right.
So I am almost certain that is going to be the case, that she's going to be one of the younglings.
I know. So I thought that was pretty cool. And, it'll be pretty, it'll be neat to explore that too. Yeah. And I think they also did say something like, so like the Inquisitors are, former Jedi, a lot of them, but then they also said that they also take, oh, wait a minute. Maybe I better not say anything. I'm thinking this might be so I can't remember I can't remember what episode it was in, but we'll just skip that.
Until I get
caught up. Yeah. Cause there might be, some, we'll just skip over that part for now.
The other reason I'm not caught up is I thought, because last week's came out on Friday, I was like, oh, they're just coming out on Fridays now. Yeah. So I wasn't even planning on watching it today until I found out I think I saw it on Twitter that it had dropped, and I was like, oh crap, I don't know
Right.
what it is.
Yeah, I think it was. We're recording on a Wednesday. It dropped today. I think yesterday I literally saw something that said like, "Oh, they're dropping on Wednesdays now," and I was like, "What?" You know, like I guess, you know, because I was excited that it was going to drop on Fridays because that just makes it easier to you know, incorporate it into watching it, whether it's Friday night or over the weekend or whatever. But yeah, you know, now it's like today was just like a rush. I'm like, well, I got to make sure I watch that. You know?
Yeah. So
and they like live in constant fear of spoilers too. And I'm
right,
like, you know, I don't mind, you know, certain spoilers I don't mind, but there's something to be said, like, you know, for experiencing, you know, like we weren't sure if Leia was in the show. When they first showed her, I was like, you know, my mouth, my jaw dropped. I was like, oh my God, they're actually doing this, you know?
Yeah, that was real weak because I managed to rally my family all together. We all watched it together Friday night, and that took some doing, but I got everybody corralled and we watched it, and it was cool because that scene came on and they're dressing her or whatever, and I'm sitting there, I was like, that has got to be Leia, right? You know, and that was really neat. It was a cool reveal, you know.
It was really fun, you know. And then there's some nice Easter eggs and stuff like that. Like you know, during the one party you saw R2 and 3PO.
Oh right, I completely forgot about that. Like it's great. And it's definitely 3PO. Like he's
I saw 3PO during the show, obviously, but apparently R2 is there too, and I only saw that.
Oh, see, R2 I didn't see. I saw 3PO.
He's over to the one side. And I only saw that somebody posted a screen grab of it that he was there too. And I said, oh, okay, that's good to know that he was there.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm like, maybe I just missed it, or maybe they just didn't make a fuss. But you know, I liked how they did it. They just were like boop and then boop, and you know, so it's just enough to be like, oh, that's right. Those robots are there. You know, the droids are there.
Right. That's totally makes sense that they would be there, right?
And
you know,
that's where they're supposed to be right now. So that makes sense. I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
You know, I liked a lot of stuff was good. I liked I'm gonna butcher his name, Kamal Najid.
Yeah, he was really good. He was really like I didn't know he was going to be in it. I was kind of surprised to see him.
I remember him saying he was going to be in it at some point. I saw something, and then I forgot as well. And then when he showed up, and you know, he's like playing the con man Jedi. I thought that was it was funny. It was funny. Yeah, and then he turned out to be, you know, quote, a good guy or whatever like that. So that was neat, but that was making me laugh, you know, because it was so over the top when he's like doing everything. He's like every like, you know, Jedi thing you've ever seen. He's like managing to do it all in the space of like a couple, you know.
Yeah, that was cool. That was cool. Well, I'm trying to think of some of the other Easter eggs, but it was just, I don't know, it was just so well done. I mean, it was really like I don't really know what else to say. Like I gotta, you know, and as much as I love Mandalorian, as much as I love that show, I just think this just seems more like and I think it's probably part expectation because of who the character is and everything.
Right.
It just feels bigger, you know.
Well, I mean, I guess the best way to say it, right? It is bigger.
Yeah,
you know, 'cause you're dealing with Obi Wan Kenobi. You're dealing with Princess Leia now. You know, now, and at the very, very end of episode 2, you're dealing with Anakin / Vader. You know, they show his eyes in the tank at the very end. You know, and so it's like right away that just ups the stakes a million times over. You know, you're like, oh, it's Vader.
Yeah, and I my assumption is Vader like felt him, right? Like, I mean, you've probably seen 3, so you probably know. But that was I was like, because of what she did in that because like Vader feels that he's out there now, right?
Yeah. Right. I without spoiling 3, I got the same impression though, that like, you know, basically Reva says Anakin's alive, and then Obi-Wan's like, what? And then I guess his mind goes there, and then it almost makes me realize like it never occurred to him to search for Anakin before.
Right.
Like, through the Force. And then when she said that, maybe that's what he did, because then they just cut right to Vader's eyes and he's just like, boom, you know?
Yeah.
So I definitely thought that I read that scene the same way. I'm just like, okay. Oh, Vader knows now, you know?
Yeah, that's really cool. It's really cool. I just think the first 2 episodes were fantastic. I'm really excited about the show. I think it's, you know, it seems like it's going to live up to the hype, at least so far. So
so far,
we'll see
so
where
good.
it goes.
Yeah, and I was, no spoilers for episode 3, but yeah, it's well worth it. Yeah, probably try to see it sooner than later on your end.
Okay.
So you don't get spoiled, because there's some pretty good stuff that happens there.
Okay. All right.
So
excellent.
And the only other Obi-Wan info or news I have is apparently at some point, we'll talk about Star Wars Celebration later and stuff, or next, but at some point over the course of Celebration, he said something like, "Oh, yeah," because we're really proud of these first 6 episodes, and he goes, "Who knows? Maybe even 7, 8, 9, or something like alluding to that. Maybe there might be more. Whether it's now, or I assume that maybe he's like thinking in his mind, he's like, this was a lot of fun. Like, he seemed to really be, the bits I saw of Celebration, he seemed to really be enjoying himself. So I thought maybe he's thinking like, we can come back and do more."
Yeah.
I did notice on the credits,
he's so good. He's
so
just
good.
so good.
Right. He's listed as executive producer, as one of the executive producers. So he's more plugged in than rather just showing up and doing his job. He's more plugged in. So if he's interested, he's probably like, yeah, let's do some more, Yeah.
And it seems like him and Hayden are like, I mean, I guess, they probably spent a lot of time together when they were younger. Right. Yeah. And it seems like they're still like kind of chummy, and
it seems right.
So they probably enjoyed working together again. And
I did see, I think it was with Ewan McGregor, but he said, he goes, he was saying how much he liked and enjoyed Hayden Christensen and all that. He goes, he goes, just because of the way things work, we haven't really seen much of each other lately. He goes, so it's such a treat to get to go back and work with him again and all that. So it was fun, whether it's real or nostalgia or they're putting it on to make you feel good or whatever. But sure, I like to believe that they're friends.
It was good. It was good to see Hayden at. I mean, I only caught, and we're going to talk about Celebration coming up, but like, I caught bits and pieces of things that were going on here and there, and it was just good to see him. Like, I always feel like the guy got a bad rap. Like I didn't love that how he portrayed that character in the prequels. I do feel like I always felt like he got a bad rap. But just good. I don't know that it was all his fault. Like, I think maybe the directing wasn't the greatest either. But like, it was good to see him like sort of back and embraced by all the fans. Like, that made me feel bad. Good.
Yeah, I know. It's funny how, having lived through the prequel era and being one of those at the time, being one of those jerks, like, oh, this is horrible, and like now, all these years later, and looking back, and you realize like, wow, those guys really got a raw deal. A lot of them. Hayden Christensen, he got panned, and I ruined the guy's career. I don't think he does much acting anymore. And then like Jake Lloyd, like he's a poor kid. He has all these, he's got a lot of problems. And the guy that played Jar Jar Binks, Ahmed Best.
Yes.
Yeah, he was very open about his like mental health problems and all that stuff. And so now as an adult, you're like, oh, I feel bad about that, and I feel bad that they went through that. And then being in that mindset, you see what happened to a lot of the sequel trilogy actors and actresses, like, the kind of the same stuff they were going through, and people were trying to stick up for them and stop it. And you're just like, oh, Star Wars, it can be basically, it can either be the best thing ever or destroy, destroy you basically. And,
well, I even think like, and that's why, like, I always feel, I felt bad for these actors, because it's like, I really do like, I mean, I love George, but I just I don't think George is the greatest director of actors. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I think that's fair.
Like, I think he's brilliant when it comes to technology and envisioning all this stuff. But when it comes to like the nitty gritty of directing an actor, I just don't think he's an actor's director. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he didn't direct Empire Strikes Back, I like, that's one of the, so I think some of the blame for why some of the stuff was awkward is, falls at George's feet, but the actors sort of bore the brunt of it. And I think Natalie Portman is a perfect example of, Natalie Portman's a great actress. That's been proven over the years. Like, she's been in all these things. She's won an Academy Award. She's been nominated for others. She's a really good actress. But in those films, she certainly wasn't at her best. And I don't think anybody would argue otherwise, right? Like and I think a lot of it is that there was a lot of green screen for these actors. Like, I mean, for us, we look at it, but like, if you're an actor, it's probably hard to be like, oh, there's this big factory scene going on behind you. I need you to act like there's a big factory going on without seeing it,
Right. That's what I know a lot of the people say now for the Mandalorian with the volume and the stagecraft and all that. They're like saying this is great because it feels like we're here. And it's one less thing they have to, they can focus on their performance much more than also having to pretend. Like, it's like, all right, I got to act, but I got to pretend I'm somewhere else, like it's,
Yeah, there's a really good, the one that I always think of is there's a really good, like, and it's like making of Attack of the Clones, or there's a scene somewhere, and I must be on the DVD extras or something that I have. But it's George directing Natalie Portman in that scene in the factory.
Oh, right.
And it's all just green screen and boxes.
Yes, right.
And he's telling her what to do, and you can even tell, like, the expression on her face is like, what? Right. So I think it was hard for those guys. I just really think it was tough for them to. Yeah, I don't think they're bad actors. I think it was just tough to, do all this.
And you figure, and that was all, at the time was all cutting edge stuff. Like, everybody rails against the CGI, but it was cutting edge, and so a couple of like years after those movies, people probably were more maybe used to that sort of thing, and then, but with the backlash, then everybody started pulling away from it as fast as they could too, because that's, even now I follow this one, and I forget his name, but I follow a special effects guy on Twitter, and he kind of always makes fun of, because the movie promotional people come out and be like, everything's practical effects, and he's like, well, actually, and like, they try to sell it that it's practical, but then he's like, everything, and he'll even show, like, he'll be like, no, this was digital, this is digital, he'll go through and show you that, so people have it in their head like, oh, CGI is bad, but he's like, well, you don't even know what you're looking at half the time, like, it's like, no, it's, so anyway, that's all. It's interesting, and I just hope for across the board that it's just, you just hope that people can differentiate between the the actual actor and the story, and then then there's the middle ground where it's like George, it's like, all right, well, Natalie Portman's great, not maybe it was the director, so right anyway. So I'm excited to see everybody. Hopefully the prequel's redeemed through this show. And I would love to, although we're not going to see Natalie Portman, how funny would it be to see Jar Jar at some point? Like, yeah, right. I mean, bring it back. If I honestly always said at the end of at the end of Rise of Skywalker, when Lando and Chewie show up with all the other ships, I always thought they were going to cut to some of the pilots, and I thought they were going to cut the Jar Jar, like, and just be like, Misa back, like, I thought it, because they were talking about, oh, we're wrapping up the whole trilogy and we're doing this. I'm like, well, that'd be great if you throw him in there. I mean, okay, it's Jar Jar, but it's like, how funny would that have been, and how, like, at that point, uplifting would it? You'd be like, hey man, Jar Jar's back, right. Yeah, don't get him in. Get him in. Right. So at some point, I know, right? I mean, because I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, I was going to start to wrap it up, but what were we going to say? No, nothing. I was just going to say. I mean, we're probably going to talk. We're going to be talking about Celebration. There was a lot of like prequel era stuff going on, so Yeah. So let's that's it for Obi-Wan. Let's wrap or roll into, basically we'll just roll into Star Wars Celebration, since we're already off topic anyway. But yeah, definitely. So so Star Wars Celebration started last week. It was like Thursday through Sunday, right? Yeah. And a lot of news came out of Star Wars Celebration, and honestly, I've been trying to catch up on it. Like, I couldn't follow it all weekend because we were running around doing stuff, but I was getting bits and pieces, and I was trying to catch up today, but there was just a lot of stuff, Yes, there definitely was. I was sort of the same way. I was catching bits and pieces. I was able to watch a few things, but I just basically it was all coming at you at once, it felt like, But what I guess, what do we have up first here to talk about? I think the first thing we have is like they dropped we
we got a lot of information about Andor. We got the trailer, and then we got some. Well, I mean, not a lot, but we got some information about where it's all going to be set in the timeline, and now I'm kind of like between the trailer and like some of the story, of how they're setting this up. I was looking forward to it to begin with,
right?
But now I'm like, wow, this really sounds interesting,
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was interested in it. I was excited for it. But after the trailer and after again hearing all this stuff, I think it's kind of neat. From a larger view, it's like you have the post Jedi stuff with the Mandalorian and Ahsoka and all that stuff, and then now here you have the post Revenge of the Sith stuff with like Obi Wan and now Rogue One. And so I wonder if they're going to be playing around with these two areas of the timeline, maybe make them a little bit more self-contained and play around with there, because if Obi Wan is 10 years after Revenge of the Sith, and then Andor, I don't think they gave us a firm date, but I think it's like
what I heard is that it's the first. All right, because we another information we found out was that there's going to be 2 seasons.
Right.
So the first season, what I understood is that the first season is going to take place 5 years before Rogue One.
Right. Okay.
Right. And then, so this takes place 5 years before. So this season that we're going to get in, what do I have here? I have it written down.
Oh, I thought I did too.
Didn't I? It's coming in. Oh, here it is, August 31st.
That's okay.
So August 31st. So this is coming August 31st. The first season, and it's 12 episodes, is going to be 5 years before Rogue One. Okay. And then the second season, which will come sometime in 2023, I think.
Right.
Is going to lead right up to Rogue One.
Yes. Okay. That's what. Yes.
And then. And then obviously, spoiler alert for that.
Right.
If you haven't seen it, but like in Rogue One, he dies, right? So, so we'll see right into, what led up to Rogue One, and then his ultimate demise, right?
Right.
So
it was funny. On one of the panels, they were interviewing him up on stage, and he's like, at least I know they won't kill me off in this series. Kind of making a joke because he's like, they've already killed him off in the movies and stuff.
Right.
One of the things that I thought was interesting about Andor also is that apparently, so Andor's obviously our main character, and we're going to learn all about him, and sort of, I think they're going to start out with him as a boy, and like you're going to gradually see him, basically, come to hate the Empire and like join the rebellion and do all that stuff. So I think it's going to be basically his like whole secret origin, but over the course of those 12 episodes. But then like sort of concurrently to him, you're also the second, like the B storyline or whatever you want to call it, is going to be Mon Mothma.
Yeah.
And it's going to be her story. And I mean, I thought, I knew she was going to be in it, but I thought it was going to be, there's Mon Mothma or whatever. But it sounds like we're going to learn a lot more about her and about how basically the birth of the rebellion.
Yeah, and this is actually like, all right, I'm going to pause it if you're watching on YouTube. What I heard from somebody today on a I don't know if I was watching YouTube or a different podcast or whatever, but they were saying that he's actually what we're gonna find out. You see these clone drop ships in the trailer, and apparently he's from a separatist planet.
Oh,
so it seems like his origins of being a rebel go all the way,
right?
Start there. Like, so, ultimately he would have been an enemy of the Jedi.
Oh, right.
In the prequel era. So now that's what they said today, and I don't know if they picked that up in the panel
Yeah. Well, that aligns with something that I read where they said, I never thought of the separatists and the rebellion as being linked because, the separatists were, quote, the bad guys of the prequels, right?
Right.
But then somebody made and I forget exactly what they said, but they said basically they made that connection and they said, oh, they've been a rebel since the separatists or something. And I'm like,
Right.
oh, I never thought of that. I never occurred to me that, the separatists were being used by the emperor as, quote, the bad guys.
Right.
They're trying to break away from the republic. They're like, no, we got to get out of here. But they were being used that way, and then they fueled the war. They gave them an enemy to fight against.
Right.
Yes.
So I thought that was really interesting. That was not something I had thought about. And again, I don't know if that. I mean, certainly you don't pick that up in the trailer, other than you see those clone dropships coming.
Right. Yeah. But that's definitely out there now because we both heard it from separate places. So I'm sure they're going to draw that, sort of another case of like connective tissue between the two trilogies.
Yeah.
Much like the Clone Wars cartoon did so well. This will be more, more from the rebellion side.
Right.
Yeah.
Because in the end, weren't the Mandalorians? They were separatists, weren't they?
Now you know what?
Because they were. I mean, I don't know if they were full-on separatists, but they were at least antagonistic towards the Jedi. I mean, they worked with the Jedi when they needed to.
Yeah,
but they were not. They weren't like. It wasn't like the Jedi and the Mandalorians were allies. They were
I almost
sort of.
I almost want to say, weren't they at the time of the Clone Wars? Weren't they independent and weren't they pacifists? Remember, like Obi-Wan and
right.
What was her name? Satine?
Yes,
the lead. Yeah. Well, I think they were pacifists at that time. I think they were sort of
she was. I don't know that all of them were, but she was.
I think as the planet was, but then like Death Watch was on the moon, and they were they were like Mando. They were like, that's where those guys came from. They were like the hardcore ones,
right?
If I remember right, I probably should,
because that's what the Satine's whole thing was, that she was trying to get them to turn away from their sort of like warrior past or whatever,
right?
And ultimately it gets her killed in the end, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what happens.
Yeah. So interesting. It'll be that'll be interesting to see. Right. It's kind of fun now, and I'm gonna jump slightly around, but apparently in Mandalorian season 3, there's a lot of Mandalorian stuff. So it kind of goes back to all this where it's like, there's Mando, and they're going to go back to Mandalore, and Bo-Katan's involved. And I think we're going to see a lot of like, the history of Mandalore. I know Favreau over the weekend, Favreau and Filoni said something about like, John had his story in mind, but then like Dave had all the lore that he wanted to bring in, and like, so it's like, again, a collaboration, but I think we're going to see a lot about that.
Because we learned, I mean, the Clone Wars, whether you loved it or you hated it, it gave you a lot about Mandalorians. I mean, you got a lot of Mandalorian history in the Clone Wars.
As a matter of fact, I remember watching that, being like, at the time, all right, enough already.
There was a lot of Mandalorians.
I really should, now that I care about Mandalorian, like all that stuff. Now I should probably go back and look at it with a different set of eyes, because at the time, I just remember being like, okay, guys, like I felt like at the time they're beating a dead horse a little bit, I'm like, look, I like the Boba Fett as much as the next guy, but this is a bit much.
I think I felt the same way.
Right.
Somebody out there on the internet has, and I've seen it several times. In fact, I gave it to my son at one point. They have like the episodes of Clone Wars you need to watch, right? Because Clone Wars, it's a good series. I enjoyed watching it, but there's a lot of filler. Like there's a lot of episodes that just don't matter.
Right.
And but that's just how TV was made, right? Like TV's different now.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just a lot of filler episodes. So there's like a list out there. If you've never seen a Clone Wars and you want to get caught up on all this stuff, go check out that list of things that you should see. Watch those. That's my suggestion.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Especially as we're heading into like all the Mandalorian season 3 stuff. And then I think even with Ahsoka, I bet you we'll probably need to see certain Clone Wars, and then Rebels obviously also, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. So, all right. So for Andor, we're excited for that. Do you have anything else for Andor?
I don't, other than
Okay.
I'm really looking forward to it. It's coming
Yeah.
August 31st, so it's not, it's not far off.
No,
So
no,
I'm
no.
excited about it.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
12 episodes, so that's for a TV series that's
That's
nowadays.
like a pretty,
that's
good
pretty,
sized chunk. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big season,
Yeah. I mean, usually what with Obi-Wan 6, Mando's usually what, 8,
Yeah.
right? Book of Boba Fett was 7, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
So,
this is a pretty.
yeah.
It's pretty hefty,
Yeah. I wonder if I'm curious why it's so long. I mean, maybe they just said, we're here, let's just keep going. You know what I mean? Instead of doing a whole season, instead of breaking everything down and it coming back for another season. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, what do we have up next then for?
I mean, what do we have? Now, we never got so there's a lot of wait, okay. All right.
There we go.
It's just not a show unless I screw up the slideshow. But I mean, maybe we should talk about Mandalorian here. I guess we talked about what we know, but
Oh, right.
so there's a lot of talk about Mandalorian. What I found out today, I thought there was a trailer.
Right.
There was, I guess there was a trailer, but it was only seen by the people who were in the hall. They haven't released it yet.
Yeah.
Although
I'm sure
there's trailers floating around on YouTube that aren't really trailers. Right? Like, it's a whole thing.
Right. Now, I did see the leaked trailer from the presentation, and it was terrible video quality, and it's a leak, and okay, I probably shouldn't watch it, but whatever, I watched it. All right. So,
yeah.
Without going too into detail, you definitely see the Mandalorian, you see Baby Yoda, and you see his new ship and stuff like that. You see Bo-Katan. She's there, and she's actually sitting on a throne at one point and has almost like a little bit of an evil look about her. So you're not quite sure very much where we left off at the end of Mando, where you're like, is she going to be evil now? Does she really want to fight him? You see there's like a shot of like Mandalore, I think it is, really quick.
Oh yeah, I heard about right.
Yeah,
I heard about this.
I
heard that there's a shot of Mando and Baby Yoda in the new ship.
Yes.
The
Naboo fighter.
The Naboo fighter.
Right.
Like flying low over like a landscape that is like completely decimated.
Yes.
Which everybody's assuming is
Mandalore. Yeah. And there's a scene of them like in a cave. It's just Mando. I think he's got a torch. The video quality was very, very bad, but it almost looks like he's like underground at this point in Mandalore, because remember he had to go to some water or some lake.
Yeah, to like fix the fact that he took his helmet off.
Yeah, and that's what it is. That's the voiceover is the armor saying like you took your helmet off, you're no longer a Mandalorian.
Yeah,
it's sort of setting up his quest for the season, I guess it is.
Okay, and then I heard the other thing I heard is that there's a scene of Bo-Katan with Baby Yoda. And her saying something along the lines of, "Oh, did you think your master was the only, or your friend was the only?"
She calls him Dad. Yeah.
Okay.
She goes, "Did you? Yeah. Do you think your dad was the only Mandalorian?"
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was interesting that she's apparently alone with Baby Yoda.
Right.
What could that mean? Right.
Right.
And so I mean, I'm excited about it. It's like. I'm looking forward to Mando season 3.
Me too.
None of those seasons have disappointed, so I'm really looking forward to this
great. The only other thing I have for Mando is it's 2023, February of 2023.
Right.
And at some point apparently it was shown, but it wasn't in the trailer I saw, but apparently Babu Frick from apparently from Rise of Skywalker, apparently he's going to be in the new season.
Okay, right. I did hear that.
Which I thought was hysterical.
And like some of a couple of like friends, or like it's going to be like just him. It's like
is
a couple of them, whatever that species is. Yeah, I did hear that.
Well, that should be fun.
Yeah, Babu Freak was cool.
Yeah, right. I mean, it was just total Star Wars. You're just like, okay, here he is.
Yeah.
So definitely looking forward to that. And Yeah. So we have Mando, and then what else did we get here?
I
So
mean,
then,
we got a trailer for Bad Batch.
yeah, let's talk about Bad Batch.
It's all very like if you haven't fought, like it's very good. Like there was a lot announced, and not everything had a trailer.
Yeah.
But I mean, some things did have trailers, but we didn't get to see them, and they're not out on YouTube. They haven't been released officially.
Right.
So there's like bad cell phone videos of them out there.
Right.
And then like when we get to Ahsoka, there's people who have created Ahsoka trailers.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Like that are not really Ahsoka trailers. Like it's a whole thing. So anyway. All right, but we did get a Bad Batch trailer for season 2, and that we have right here. So I'm going to run this. And what we did find out is I don't think we have a date, but Bad Batch season 2 is going to be in the fall.
Yes,
I don't think we have an exact.
I think
date,
it just said fall so far, right?
Okay, so my guess is probably September, October time frame.
That's what I would guess. Yeah. So, but I know for this, it looks like, or not, it looks like they all got a bit of a redesign. Apparently, everybody's looks a little bit, updated this season. Like, it looks like Omega has a helmet this season, and like, silly things like that. But it's nice to see like, they for season 2 they changed the looks of everybody. Yeah,
and the one thing that I guess I don't have too much to say about the trailer. Like I've said before, I didn't have a whole lot of expectation for Bad Batch. I was sort of like, I'll watch it. I wasn't like blown away. Yeah, I wasn't super excited about it. And I really liked season 1. I was surprised at how much I liked season 1.
Yeah.
I thought they got into some really interesting stuff, and it seems like even in this trailer, like you don't learn a whole lot, but one of the things they sort of toyed with in season 1 was the idea that these guys like they're sort of being asked like, how come you're not joining the fight against the Empire, right? Like they toyed with that idea of, well, why aren't they joining like the rebellion against the Emperor? And it seems like a couple of things are mentioned in this trailer which sort of leans into that,
right?
And I just think that's really interesting because it's sort of like a no-brainer. These guys are clones. They sort of got, the Empire turned their back on them. The Empire tried to kill them,
right?
In the end.
Yeah.
And like, where does that leave them in the world? And it seems like they're trying to stay out of it all, but it's like that at some point they're going to get pulled in, and that's what I think is kind of interesting about this show is like these are guys that are like, no, we don't want to have anything. We did our duty. We fought the Clone Wars. We're done now, and I think it's interesting. What it's like the clone person. In Obi Wan we didn't mention it, but like we see in Obi Wan, you see that clone trooper.
Right.
That lone clone trooper who's out there like kind of panhandling, and Obi-Wan, gives him some credits and stuff like that because he feels bad for him. But I think that's an interesting story from this, in Star Wars. Like, all right, what happens to all these clones? All these clones fought this war. There's hundreds of thousands of them out there.
Right.
They don't become stormtroopers, or at least not all of them.
Not right. What happens
to them?
Yeah.
And I just think it's an interesting story.
I got when we saw the clone in Obi-Wan, and maybe I read too much into it, but I got vibes of like going back to like the Vietnam era.
Exactly.
And, when those soldiers came home and everyone was sort of like disowned them, right or wrong, whatever that,
right.
It is very different than it was previously and that we try to be now. And so I kind of got that impression, and it made me wonder if that's, sort of where these guys are going to go. Like everyone's going to be like, oh, clones, like, and kind of turning their nose up at them. And, they maybe they do, they don't want to get involved, and maybe they do, but maybe people don't want them involved, so there's a lot of like, there's a lot of interesting stuff to explore there.
Well, I think we talked about in season 1, how like this show reminds me of sort of like the A-team of the Star Wars universe, right?
Yeah.
As like they're out there like, fighting crime. If you need help, who to call, like kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
and what were the A-Team?
Right.
They were Vietnam vets, right?
That's
that had
right.
sort of gotten,
yeah, they got a bad rap, and
right.
Yeah, I forget what's the opening line of that show. Like they were
like framed or something. I forget exactly what happened.
Right. They were on the run type of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, right. So it's very similar to these guys. Yeah. I mean, it's a great premise for the show. I haven't watched it in years, but the old A-Team was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it's a great, whether or not they did it on purpose or not, but it's a great premise for this to be like, what if we did the A-Team in Star Wars? You're like, man, that's a great idea. So they could definitely have a lot of fun with this and explore a lot of stuff. Whether Star Wars doesn't get too deep, but it gets deep enough where you can figure. You're like, okay, this is an interesting observation here. This is an interesting take on this.
Yeah, I it's like I said, I liked this show more than I expected to. And it was sort of a surprise to me. And because I've said before, I'm not a huge fan of Clone Wars. I watched it, I liked it. It was, I know there's people out there that love it. I'm not one of those people.
Right.
So that's why one of the reasons I wasn't expecting much from this, and I was really surprised at how good it was. I think they get into some stuff. I think that's what's so interesting about all these shows is they're delving into the history we've always wanted to know.
Exactly.
In like a different way, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just like I really like how they're doing it. Like we're learning about that period between. We're now learning about that period between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, and we're learning it through characters that we didn't really know.
Right.
I mean, well, Obi-Wan we know, but like, what I'm saying?
Yeah, but if you take him and you're like, all right, Obi-Wan's your keystone, that's all right, here's your main guy. But then you have the Bad Batch on the front end of it. It's like, all right, well, here are these guys, but we're going to show you how the galaxy was here. And then on the other end of the thing, you have Andor, and you're like, all right, now we're going to show you how it was on this end of the spectrum type of thing. And it's they're smart to do it that way, because as we saw with Mandalorian, if you can have new characters, it makes it more exciting, and it makes it more interesting and stuff like that. I mean, I think Obi-Wan's going to prove us wrong here, and I think finally it's going to be like, oh, legacy character, and it doesn't feel, to me it works right. Although I've seen other people complaining about various aspects of it, but to me it's working. And a lot of people worried about the continuity of it all. Like they're like, oh well, how why doesn't Princess Leia know him when she sees him? And they're like, well, if you watch the thing, she says Ben Kenobi's here. Because that was a movie that was made 40 years ago, and they weren't ever, and no one ever imagined this was going to happen. That's why. Right. That's the real reason.
That's your reason.
Right. And if you go through and if you watch everything carefully, it's like, oh no, they actually tried to address that. She, Leia's like, they Obi-Wan or something, and she goes, Ben, like, and then you realize in the show, she only knows him as Ben. So you're kind of like, well, maybe that's why,
Right.
And someone else made a point of, they're like, oh, well, we always wondered why Leia and Han named, I always say their names wrong, Leia named Kylo Ren, named him Ben Solo. And it's like, now we find out, oh, that nice man Ben saved you from falling to your death, when you were a little kid. Right. Maybe that stuck with you all these years. And then only later did you realize, oh my God, that was Obi Wan Kenobi. And so people were thinking that way too. So I think the connectivity is there, and I think they tried really hard to make it all work out.
Right.
Whether it does or not, it like you said, it's at this point a 45-year-old movie.
Right,
it's like, guys, they didn't think it would who thought it would make it past that summer.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. And I'll say this, like, I mean, you can't, Filoni for like, Filoni doesn't let that kind of stuff, you know what I'm saying? Like he doesn't, to me, that's not a big deal. I know that line of dialogue is in it.
Right.
It doesn't bother me that it's there. It does, like, the continuity, like, okay, if there's a break in the continuity, I don't care.
Right.
Like that's where I'm at. But like Filoni is not like that, right? Like you can't say what you will about Filoni, but he is just like, when it comes to canon, there is nobody who knows more, right?
Right,
like I mean, so I just like he is all over this stuff. So I give him credit, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and I think they're trying their hardest to make it work on both ends. You want to tell an awesome story and get people excited and all that, and you want it to work in the back. So yeah, all right. So you might have to finesse things a little bit, but at this point you're like, okay, that's fine.
Right.
And I go back to a lot of times too. Growing up and reading comic books all those years, like they were constantly revising and retconning and doing all this stuff with the old stories, and like, so like you're just used to it. Like, you may not have liked it, but they did it. And so now, you're like, okay, well, if this is how it has to be, and like not has to be, but you're like, oh, well, I get it. You got to move forward. You got to push everything forward. So I get it. So I think a lot of these people that don't get it, maybe never grew up following, maybe Star Wars is the only thing they really followed, that never tried to reboot itself, or even a lot of the people that got so upset when they ditched all the legend stuff. Like I'm like, where were you for the Crisis? I mean, they threw out like DC threw out like half half of their stories with that, and like to me, I'm like, all right, it's another day at the at the park. Oops.
It's the thing. I guess what drives me nuts is, and I read an article. Somebody was talking about Star Wars last week or something, and I picked it up and read it, and I thought it had a couple interesting points. But like, the thing is, like, canon isn't supposed to be a straitjacket either. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's fun to know it because it brings like a deeper understanding to some things. It brings so it's like fun to know it, but it's not like, well, because this happened, here 30 years ago, that means we can never do anything here. It's not supposed to be a creative straitjacket. It's just to inform, you know?
Right.
And this article I read that I didn't totally agree with what the guy was saying, but like this I did agree with. Like, George developed Star Wars as, it was based on those serials that he would watch as a kid. Like when you'd go to the movies and you'd watch like a half hour of, some cowboy and there'd be a cliffhanger, and then you'd go see it in the next week to see what happened in there. And it was like, and they were just fun, and they were action, oriented, and it was just fun to go see them. And that's what he wanted Star Wars to be. Like nobody watched those serials and was like, well, 3 episodes ago,
right.
He left his gun on the table. So boy, that can't happen. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that, it's just,
right.
Canon shouldn't be this rigid thing that never moves,
Right. Yeah. Especially as you're nearing 50 years of this stuff, you're going to have to give and take, and and I mean, they're looking to tell more stories. So, right. Whereas like Obi-Wan's the best example. We, in our minds, he stayed in that desert and that was it,
Right.
And now in hindsight, you're like, oh, maybe he didn't. Oh, this is pretty cool.
Right. It's much cooler than he did,
Yeah. Right.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. I don't have anything else for Bad Batch. I just thought the trailer was interesting and it looks good.
Yeah.
What else do we have going on here? I don't even know what order we have anything.
I know.
I'm so confused.
I feel like I feel like the weekend was like everything was like, they had the initial panel, which they released a lot of this stuff, and then over the weekend, like little things slipped out here and there over the weekend, and so it's just, I feel like it's just all out there,
Yeah. It's really hard to get my head around it, but one of the things they announced was, and they dropped a trailer for it, is this Jedi Survivor, which is the sequel to Jedi Fallen Order.
Okay.
And I just thought this was interesting. I'm a video game person, right? I like video games. Now one of the things that annoys me about video game trailers is when they show you a trailer without any gameplay. That bothers me. But this is, so there's no gameplay here. It's just all the cinematics, and that's fine. But it's just, it looks good. I mean, the cinematics look good. I'd be interested to see a little bit of gameplay, but I never finished this game. I probably put like 10 hours or so into it.
Okay.
It's a good game. I mean, Jedi Fallen Order is a very good game. I enjoyed it. One of these days I'm going to get back to it. I just have other stuff on my plate. And this looks amazing. Like, the game was really good. It was fun to play, and it's cool that they're coming out with like another a sequel to it, essentially. Yeah. And I'm excited about it. I'm probably not going to pick it up day one because I probably won't have the other one finished by then.
Right.
But this looks really good. And what's cool is this is in the timeline. This is that same timeline, right? That time between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope, and it's about this Jedi who's trying to survive out there, and it's really good. I'm looking forward to this. I think it'll be good.
I know. One of the things I was thinking about when I saw this is I'm not a big video game guy anymore. I mean, I did play for a while, and I thought about going back and playing it, and then I thought, I'm like, I wonder if they have a thing out there with just like basically like, can I just go and watch like the cinematic stuff and just get the story?
Yeah. You could probably do it on YouTube.
Right.
You could probably find it on YouTube.
And I'm really go ahead.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No, I was just going to say, I'm really surprised that like, Lucasfilm, like now that they're coming out with a sequel, they should put like stitch all those cinematic things together and then release it as something to watch on Disney Plus, right? Because then like I'd sit down and watch it because I don't frankly feel like playing the video game, but I'm interested in the story. Yeah. And you think they could put it on Disney Plus, it's more content for them, but also it might make somebody be like, wow, I think I'm going to go play this game. Yeah. Like I'm surprised they don't do that unless they figure it's on YouTube, whatever, maybe I'm
right. It's a very good game. I mean, I enjoyed it. What part of it is that, I was playing on my son's PS5 and we used to have the PS5 in the living room. He's moved it down to the basement. That's very far.
Right.
Now. It's very far to go down to the basement. And, and he's always on it. So it's like, so I never have time to play it anymore, but like, it's quite good. I mean, it really is. It's exciting. It's kind of, because I've been playing all these Legend of Zelda games. It's Zelda-like, I think.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's your character. You're on an adventure. You've got to find certain items. You've got to find, there's puzzles that you have to kind of like figure out, and you go on missions, you go on side quests. I mean, it's really good. I mean, I thought, and I thought the character was really interesting, and some of the characters you meet are kind of interesting. Yeah. And it's, there was even, Saul Guerrera was in it.
Right. That's right. That's yeah.
Yeah. So I got at least that. Like I said, I got probably 10 hours into it. I never finished it. But like, I met Saul Guerrera, and, he was helping me out on some things, and it's a good game. It really is. It's just a very good game.
I was trying to think, I'm like, what else does Saul Guerrero just turn up in? But it was the Bad Batch. He was younger.
Oh, right? That's right. Yeah. He always, he keeps showing up here and there.
I think it's pretty cool how, he was like sort of like not a throwaway character, but he was, was in the original Clone Wars series. And then I guess when they were writing Rogue One, they're like, oh, we have a guy that this might actually work for. And then, so now he's like all over the place,
Right.
Yeah. So well, this would be pretty cool. I'm nice. I mean, like I'm not a gamer per se, but I'm happy to see them coming out with some, some more games. Cause I mean, that was always a huge part of Star Wars. There's always, some cool video games. I mean, back in the day, there was the Atari and all that stuff, but like, there's always been some kind of game out there. And, it feels like other than these two, it feels like there's not much, I feel like there's not a lot of stuff out there. And I don't know why
I think EA had the license, as I recall.
Yeah, right. And now they don't, or now they
and it was
or it's not exclusive anymore.
Right. EA exclusively had the license. They came out with those 2 Battlefront games.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which were beautiful to look at, but were terrible to play.
Right.
And they sort of quickly came and went. Like people still play them, but it's the games are actually better now, right? Because now since then they've done updates and patches.
Okay.
things like that. So I played it several months ago, and it was fun. I mean, they're fun to play. It was just for me, who's not like, I'm terrible at first person shooters. So
Right. Yeah, me too.
I was no good at those games at all. I mean, I just like kind of like running around the world.
Right.
And
that's probably one of the last games I played, as a matter of fact, because I would get so mad.
Yeah, it's very irritating.
Yeah.
So those games sort of tanked, and then they came out with Jedi Fallen Order. That was a success. But after that, they lost after the Battlefront debacle. They lost the exclusive license. So I think this is coming out, and I think I heard that there's something else coming out.
I know there's some kind of mobile game coming out. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah,
but it's like they released a character poster, and it's like it actually looks like the back of the old Kenner card, because it has all the different like characters you can play, but like, you know, there's no customization to it. It's like you can either be this guy or this guy or this guy, but you know, there's aliens, and there's like two Jawas that like one stands on top of the other one's shoulders, and you can be that guy. So it looked, you know, it looked a little cutesy, but it looked like it could be. I think it's called Hunters. I think it's Star Wars Hunters. I think it's called.
Oh, okay, all right.
But I think it's more of a mobile, you know, that type of game.
Okay.
So, you know, and there are some other ones out there. What's the one? They're all mobile games, and I haven't paid any attention to them. It's like, you know, you can get various characters, and I guess you have them fight each other.
Okay.
You know, but I'm not sure. But anyway, there's no like true, like, I mean, there's the Star Wars, the Fallen Jedi and the Survivor one now, you know, but there's like not a lot of games like that. And there's like no like fighting like ship games anymore.
Yeah. They're really not like, and it's kind of like the Star Wars universe is ripe for video gaming. I don't know what's happening. Like, I don't know why they can't get a decent game out.
The only thing I can figure is that it's just become so incredibly expensive to make the games now.
Yeah.
Because I just saw something, they're releasing one of the old ones on the Switch.
Yes. The Knights of the
Knights
of the Old Republic is coming to Switch.
Yeah.
If it's not already there.
Right.
And then I keep seeing other games like through the years getting released out there.
Yeah, maybe they're finding that that's the way to do it, that they can update an old game and send it over to the newer platforms, and maybe they're just as successful. I don't know. Yeah. So it's interesting. That's a whole other discussion about the video game industry, but you know, it is a shame that there aren't more games out there for people to play. Yeah.
But this looks good, so we'll see. I think I forget when it said it's coming out. 2023. So
okay, all right. So that's next year too, then. Okay.
Yeah. So,
all right.
What else we have to?
Let's see.
I think that might be our last trailer.
Okay.
Yes.
Here. I just put this together to sort of like a quick overview of. So this is all the stuff that they announced over the weekend. In terms of TV and TV shows and stuff like that. You know, we talked about the Mandalorian already. Season 3 is coming in February. We saw the leaked trailer on that one. I'll just go through this real quick just because we don't have that very much on it. But so Skeleton Crew is going to be by it's going to be set after Return of the Jedi. It's by John Watts, who is the director. He's the guy that did all the Spider-Man movies, the recent ones.
Okay.
And so Favreau apparently got friendly with him because he's playing Happy in all those movies. And they said, you know, he's like, they got talking. He's like, well, why don't you come do a Star Wars? And so he's going to come over, and his Skeleton Crew is going to be Jude Law is going to be the I don't know if he's the main actor, but he's like the lead, I guess. They announced him, and it's going to be a lot of kids on the show. And one of the things that struck me is they said it's although kids are in the show, it's not necessarily a kids show. You know what I mean? So it's not a children's show,
okay.
Which, you know, some of these other ones down the bottom are more geared for children. It's going to have some kids in it, but it's not necessarily geared towards children. So I thought that was interesting.
All right.
Yeah. I don't know much about what it's about. I mean, the promo art they showed was some like big spaceship, and the kids in it are kind of like walking up towards it. It was literally just a drawing. And so I'm like, going by Skeleton Crew, I'm guessing they might. Oh no, I do know that I think they get a ship and they're trying to make their way home, and it just takes place sort of in the Star Wars, you know.
Yeah, like what I heard is that it's a bunch of kids who get lost in the Star Wars universe and they're trying to get home. That's what I heard.
All right.
And somehow Jude Law plays into it. Honestly, the first thing I thought of when I heard this was that Star Trek Prodigy show, because it's essentially the same premise.
Oh, is that right? Okay, that's interesting.
Right. I and at first I thought this was animated, and I was like, So they're just like doing what Star Trek did, right?
Right,
And then I'm like,
yeah.
no, but it sounds like this is live action.
Yes, yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I honestly, I haven't even watched Star Trek Prodigy. I just know that it's a bunch of kids in a starship that got lost.
Yeah.
And so
Well, I think-
I just thought that was I just thought that was interesting, right?
Yeah, that is interesting when you, especially when you look at it that way.
Yeah.
I did before I realized that I was thinking more of like a Goonies vibe, or like a like an, and I forget if they said this at some point, but the old Amblin Entertainment always had the kids and so that's kind of what I was thinking with it. But that is interesting, the comparison to Star Trek. So maybe they'll get burn on that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it was funny. It's funny that that's their because weren't we just saying in the last show? I think I was like, it's a shame. I think we were talking about Stranger Things, and I said it's a shame because like there were so many movies when we were kids, that were like about kids, but they weren't like like the Goonies and Gremlins and all these movies that had like kids in it, but they weren't like kids movies per se, right? And
there's that. It was that fine line where it's like
and I was saying, I was like, it's a shame because like our kids don't really have that, and those movies were great,
It
seems like this is trying to do that, right? Like make it,
That's really interesting. I wonder for the kids. I was just thinking, like, because you're right, like with all the, I mean, even Star Wars and Marvel for the most part, like everybody's adults, like whereas all those movies, I mean, maybe Spider-Man might fall into that category because I think the kids can relate to him more. But but for in this show, in terms of that, I think that might be very interesting to see how it works out, and maybe that's part of the behind the scenes. Maybe they're thinking that too, like, oh, like Stranger Things was really popular, and like I said, all these older kids movies, they could probably do something a lot like, again, everybody can enjoy it. It's going to star kids, but it'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Like even E.T. E.T.'s another. That's like that whole movie is kids and E.T. right? Like the adults are sort of running around.
Right. That's exactly. I totally blanked on E.T., but that's exactly what I was thinking of. Right. And I mean, in Stranger Things, like that pretty much just like takes a page right out of E.T. because it's like in the beginning, the kids are sitting around playing Dungeons and Dragons. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like, and E.T., I think they were sitting around were they playing Dungeons and Dragons in that?
They were at the beginning. They were playing Dungeons and Dragons at the beginning. Yes.
Yeah. So it'll be neat to see. And the fact that they got John Watts from Spider-Man involved. I mean, I don't know much about him other than he did the Spider-Man movies, but he did a hell of a job on them. So I was like, all right, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So
I did hear someone speculate because I guess take it for what it's worth, but I guess people have been speculating, like now that we're about to talk about Ahsoka,
right?
We know Thrawn is involved. I guess people have speculated on the internet that Jude Law would be a good candidate for Thrawn.
Oh,
so maybe Jude Law is not going to be, like we're all assuming, it's Jude Law and all these kids. Maybe Jude Law is the antagonist of this.
That could be very interesting, right? The ship they get on is somehow linked to Thrawn, and he's chasing them for the ship. Yeah. Oh, that could be really neat.
So I just thought that, again, take it for what it's worth, but that's something I read today.
He does have, I mean, he has that sort of classic structure that, I mean, you obviously can make him blue, but that could be pretty neat.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah. Very interesting. So that's Skeleton Crew, and then that brings us to Ahsoka. And again, in the same time period. And Ahsoka, as far as I know, I think they showed some footage. I couldn't find any information on it.
Yes,
right?
I think I don't know that they saw a trailer, but I think they saw footage.
Okay.
And and it's like I said, like I assumed a trailer had dropped, so I was out on YouTube looking for a trailer.
Right.
I found several trailers that are, but like one of them starts like I was watching one of them, and it started as it was the one I thought was the official one,
right?
And it started with, that scene in Rogue One at the Jedi Temple when they were,
yes,
the statue or something is on the ground, and I was like, oh, was she on that planet, right? Like,
right.
and then as it went on, I was like, wait a minute, none of this is new footage.
Yeah,
this is
right.
all footage from. So
right.
just yeah.
I hate it when people do that because I forget I fell for that recently too. I was doing something and I'm like, what? Let's wait a minute, you know.
So yeah, there. As far as I know, there is no official trailer out.
Right. But I know that Rosario Dawson, I guess she called in the one day in full costume and was talking to the crowd, and everybody's all excited because apparently her LeQ, whatever the tentacles called.
I think they're LeQ. Yeah, something like that.
But apparently they adjusted them now and they're a little bit longer.
Okay.
So like because people didn't like that when she first showed up, they said they weren't, long enough. So now they're longer.
Lord.
Right. I know. I know. But the other thing they did say, I gotta get my glasses to see this now. They have, let's see, Ahsoka. So they announced that Sabine is going to be in the show.
Yes.
And she's going to be played by Natasha Liv Borizo. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I saw a picture of her, didn't recognize her, but so she's definitely going to be in the show. They brought Chopper out on stage, so I'm guessing Chopper is going to be in the show at some capacity. And then there was a rumor that some of the footage showed Hera, and I don't know who's playing.
Oh, I saw this scene. And it was I saw this. I saw a photo of whatever they saw.
Oh,
so,
okay.
And they're in the cockpit of what appears to be the Ghost.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And it's from the back of the cabin to the to the front. So you see the pilot's chair, and you see somebody sitting in the pilot's chair, and she's got.
The
tentacles or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're down the back of the chair. So you don't see the actress at all. You don't know who's playing her, but somebody's sitting there who's clearly
got the
supposed to be Hera,
okay.
right?
All right.
And but that's what I saw. Now maybe that's what they're talking about, maybe it's not, but that's what I saw.
Oh, okay. That
and it was real grainy and not a great picture.
Okay, well, that matches up then with I heard that apparently you saw there, that she was there. So it looks like there's going to be like a partial Rebels reunion. Then it's going to be Sabine and Ahsoka and Hera and Chopper, and then they're obviously searching for Ezra.
Yes,
Thrawn is still out there as well, and then Kanan died, and then Zeb, I guess at the end of the Rebels, he went back with his people to like their secret planet or something, right? Didn't he take? And he took the. Oh, and then he took the other guy with him. I thought the Imperial guy.
Yeah, but my guess is if they're getting everybody else back together, they're going to bring Zeb in.
Yeah. I'll be curious to see. I'd be curious to see how they do Zeb in live action.
Yeah. The only other thing I saw was that I guess, and I didn't remember this until I was like, oh yeah, I remember that now. Where like the final scene of Rebels is like you see. Sabine, and she's in front of a painting. I get that apparently she did of the team, right?
Right.
So it's Ezra's there, and I think Kanan, and like the whole team from the show is there.
Oh, right. Yes,
and
I know what you mean.
And I guess in whatever they saw, you see. That actress who's going to be playing Sabine standing in front of that.
Now that
painting.
I did see a picture of that. Yes,
and I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, because someone made a comment. They're like, "Oh, I'm surprised they kept the artwork from the show. They actually just used that."
Yeah,
artwork for it.
It's exactly from the show. Yes.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool too. I did see that today. I forgot. So it's going to be a continuation of Rebels. It's going to take place. Well, that's interesting. It's going to take place after Jedi. With in the same timeline as Mandalorian, and at the end of Rebels, we found out that Hera has a kid, right?
Yes,
right. So I guess her kid will be involved as well.
Yeah,
So, and I forget what his name was in the show. I can't. It wasn't Jason.
I don't know. I did we even get one? I don't even know that we got one.
I feel like we did, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
I don't know why. The only reason Jason is sticking in my head is because that was originally Han and Leia's kids were Jason and Jaina or something like that in the EU. And I remember when they did that, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cute. They took that name for somebody else.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's another character I guess that could be popping up too. So,
And and the only other thing I heard was that I guess in whatever they saw there was a hand, and then like a cup came to it or something like that. So that could, there could be Ezra.
Yeah.
I mean, if they're getting all these people together, Ezra's
right.
Ezra's coming. I mean, you can make it a secret if you want. He's clearly coming.
Right. Yeah. Apparently, I forget the actor's name, but I guess the guy that played Aladdin in the live action Aladdin.
Oh, yeah.
He's been rumored to be Ezra for quite some time now. And he'll even tweet stuff like, "Oh, getting into Ezra shape" and stuff like that. So like, I don't know if it's the best kept, the worst kept secret, or if he's just kind of, kidding around, because, sometimes he'll do that. But I'm sure he'll turn up too. So it'll be interesting to see. It's kind of fun that it'll be neat to see a sequel to a live action, or a sequel to a live action sequel to an animated show.
Yeah.
And again, then the connectivity and all that should be pretty cool too, to see how that works out. So
yeah,
I'm excited
about it. And I like that. And I've said this before, like, I think that Star Wars needs, I think they need to do away with this Last Jedi thing, and they need Jedi. They need, give us some Jedi. They don't have to be in the Skywalker timeline. Have them sitting outside like Ezra. Like, he doesn't really have anything to do with them, but he's having his own adventures over here. And he's like, I like that. I think that makes for really interesting stories,
Right.
Like, they're not all here dealing with Darth Vader and the Emperor. Like, maybe there's some out there that are just.
Well, I kind of, even like that with Obi Wan, when they had that other Jedi show up. At first, I'm like, what? There's another one, and then I'm kind of like, oh, that's kind of cool. It just shows that they didn't get everybody, and then these poor guys are just like, just scattered to the wind. Like,
right.
They're still, it's not, we thought, it was like, oh, Luke's the last one, and maybe by that point he was, but obviously not, because there's still people floating around. But yeah, I agree with you. It's like there are no more of this last. Get rid of the Last Jedi. Yeah, well, that's one of the things. As much as people don't like the Last Jedi, I did like that Rian Johnson was at the end with the little boy, and showed that like anybody could be a Jedi. Yeah, with the broom boy or whatever they call him. I liked that aspect of it, that it's like you don't have to be part of this big, this whole mess. You can just have the Force, and and I
you can be a Force user and use it.
So anyway, so that's it for Ahsoka. And then these next few I don't really have much about, but they announced Visions season 2.
Yeah.
That is coming in spring of 2023. And the only news I have on that, other than there's a season 2, is they said, I read two conflicting reports. One said that there was going to be some more, it sounded like more of a traditional anime episodes. So like, I know when the first season I liked, I'd say it was 50-50 what I liked and didn't like. But I was disappointed there wasn't like a couple of true anime episodes that had like the Robotech look to it, you know what I mean? Or Star Blazers, you know what I mean? True. So I read somebody saying that there's going to be an episode that was more true anime. And then I read something else that said there's going to be much more different styles of animation, like more like of a worldwide animation type stuff.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, well, that's cool then. It just, I'd like to get the anime version that I had in my head. I'd like to get an episode about that. But I'm just like, all right, you're gonna do some Star Wars cartoons that don't matter. That I don't want to say don't matter, but that don't. All right, fine, let's go. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like you. I saw this. I liked it more than I expected to, and some of them I liked, some of them I didn't. But it was probably about 50-50 for me. I'm glad they did it. I thought it was a really cool thing for them to do. Yeah, because some of the stories were really good.
Yeah, some of them I really liked and stuff. Part of me does think, I'm like, well, I kind of would like them to do this and still be experimental and all that, but I don't necessarily need it to fit perfectly into the universe, but I part of me would like it to fit maybe just outside the universe, or just because some of those ones they played around a little bit, in my mind they're playing around a little bit too much, and I'm just like, okay, you've gone a little too far with the liberties on it, but whatever, it's still a fun show, and I like animation, and I like to see the different styles, so that's always fun.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. I put Star Wars Galaxy's Edge here because we talked about it. Yeah, we talked about it last time and or a couple times ago. And they announced over the weekend that apparently Boba Fett and Fennec Shand are going to start roaming Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah.
So we had previously talked about, we're like, why did they lock themselves into that timeline? Why are they, and now I guess obviously that's out the window. Now they're going to start, letting at least these two characters make their way through there. So
yeah. Well, I think what they're finding is because in the Avengers campus out in Disneyland,
right.
It's very popular. Like the people really like, with all these Marvel shows. They had Moon Knight, and after every Moon Knight episode dropped, they had that, so they had Mr. Knight, and they had Moon Knight in the costume, and they had, and after every episode they got a new character out there. Like people love that. People loved it, and I think they're seeing that that's really popular, and they're like, you know what, maybe we need to do this with Star Wars. And I'm like, yeah, you need to do it with Star Wars.
Right, go for it.
Yeah, like forget about the timeline. I mean,
right, the timeline. It was, in hindsight, it was an interesting experiment, and I could see what you were trying to do with it, but I show me everybody, bring it, I just, whether you do it by season, by time of day, by whatever show's going on right now. I mean, all right, right now it's Boba Fett, or right now it's Obi Wan. Here comes Obi Wan.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, have him out there. Nobody cares. You know what I mean? It's like at the end of the day,
there's a very small group of people that care.
Right. At the end of the day, it's like, look, I just want to get my picture with Obi Wan. You know what I mean? Or I want to see, even if it's at the Galaxy's Edge and they have it on top of the buildings, you're like, oh, there's Obi Wan. Like that's all you want to do. Yeah. So hopefully they'll start breaking that timeline barrier a little bit, more. So.
I think they need to, and I'm glad they're doing it. It's but it is interesting they are only doing it in Disneyland.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, they've only announced to do it in Disneyland.
Wonder why.
I have my suspicions why.
Why is that?
I think it's because people are paying $6,000 to go on that Star Cruiser.
Right.
And so they don't want to.
Oh.
I think that's what
okay.
That is just me being a Disney fan and looking at what's happening.
Yeah.
But I thought they specifically said it's only for Disneyland.
Yes, right. I didn't. Now that you say it, I wonder if that's right. So they don't want to. Or if someone's spending all that money, they come out and see Boba Fett. This is no longer immersive. As they stand next to the guy. They stand next to the guy with the Homer Simpson T-shirt.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Exactly. That's my guess. That's my guess. Yeah. But okay. I mean, the one thing that Disney World has that Land doesn't, where they could probably fix this. They used to have that, and I don't know if you ever saw it, but that Star Wars launch bay.
Yeah, we didn't. Did
you ever get down there for that? And that was like, it was like it was an area of Hollywood studios that used to be something else, and they stopped using it for that, and so it was empty. Okay. And then in the interim between when Galaxy's Edge was built, they wanted to have some kind of Star Wars thing other than Star Tours,
right?
So they put Star Wars characters, and they put a cantina in there, and that kind of thing.
Oh, they had a cantina too,
right? And you could go there. That's where you met Chewbacca and got your picture with Chewbacca, yes, where you went and got your picture with Darth Vader. And that was really cool. And what I've heard is that they're thinking about reopening that.
Oh, okay.
And to me, that's the solution. If you're not going to do, if you don't want to do it in Galaxy's Edge,
right,
in World, then reopen Launch Bay and do it there. That's what I think they should do.
Right. If you're trying to keep it quote pure for the Star Cruiser or whatever the reason is, then do that. Because I mean,
because they're not using Launch Bay for it. Like they're not doing anything with it. It's just there. So it I was like, why wouldn't you open it and put a couple meet and greets in there?
I wonder, did they close it for COVID and then they just haven't reopened it yet, or did they?
No, they closed. I mean, they never. It was always supposed to be temporary. I mean, they said that initially it was only ever going to be temporary, and so then when Galaxy's Edge opened, they were like, oh, we don't need this anymore, and they closed it.
Oh, I see. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So, so all right. So that's it for Galaxy's Edge. Tales of the Jedi is a new animated series of shorts, and they're deal with the Jedi. This looks like it could be kind of neat because it's going to be like I guess they showed part of episode 1, which is going to be Ahsoka, and it's going to be like baby Ahsoka or whatever, something with Ahsoka's mother or whatever. But it looked interesting. They also said that it's going to have like Qui-Gon, a young story of young Qui-Gon Jinn. Count Dooku is going to be a story about him, like a younger version of him. So it seems like, it'll be Tales of the Jedi, obviously, but it seems like it might be a little bit, there might be more to it than just, generic tales. It might be more like, we might be getting more insight into some of these characters, which I thought was kind of cool. I don't know why, but I was very interested in the Count Dooku one, just because, I kind of always found him a little lame in a way, but he's interesting. His backstory is interesting. Like he was, Qui-Gon's master, and I think he was Yoda's student, right? If I remember right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then he never was truly like a Sith. He was like, he was like a Jedi, that he was, he had left the order, but he was trying to do what he thought was right. Obviously he was wrong, but so I think he's interesting and ripe to explore.
Yeah. I had always hoped we were in the films that we would get more about him, because it was like they sort of laid the groundwork for some interesting stuff. Like you're saying, like he was, Qui-Gon was his student, and I was like, wow, that's could be some interesting stuff. And Qui-Gon almost had a little, what you never find out from Qui, but it seemed like didn't he say at one point that Qui-Gon kind of thought in his direction too, or something like that?
Right.
So I thought that was interesting, but they just never went anywhere with it,
Right. Yeah. So it'll be neat to see if they pick up on that. You can kind of run with that a little bit. It'd be fun to see that story anyway. But again, just neat little stories that maybe are ripe for the picking, and the sketches I saw, or the promotional artwork, it wasn't. Maybe I did see a still, because I think I did see something from the Ahsoka show, but the animation looks nice. It looks like it's traditional animation. It's not the 3D animation, but it looked I don't know. It looked nice. I like the look of it. So I can't really describe it other than it's animated, but it's not. It looks nice. It looks well done. So I'm interested in that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then the only other two things I have here are these are for kids, but I mean, I've watched the Lego stuff before, but there's it's
always fun.
Yeah, Lego Star Wars Summer Vacation, I guess, is going to be a new Lego special, but apparently it's going to be Finn is going to be the star of this one, whereas Poe was star of the Christmas one.
Oh, okay.
So they're going to put Finn, as the main character. I don't know anything else about it, but I guess it's set after Rise of Skywalker, so that's always interesting, because I think during the Christmas one is when we learned that he was training with Rey to be a Jedi. So that was kind of
neat. Right. Yeah, that's right.
So anyway, that's something to look forward to. Like I said, they're always silly and fun. But the other one was Young Jedi Adventures. And now this is going to be for kids. It's going to be done. The thing I read, it's going to be done in the style. It's animated. It's going to be done in the style of the old Golden books, like when we were kids.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like that, that lush animation, I guess is what you would call it, or something like that.
Okay.
Let me see. I have some.
The only thing I read was, is it set in the High Republic era? Did I read that right, or was I looking at something else?
Now that you say that, yes, because I believe maybe not. I was going to say, I think it is. Now that you say that, I'd forgotten that. I think in the logo there, I think the logo in the word "young," the symbol in the circle there, I think that might be the High Republic symbol.
Oh yeah. Okay.
But yes, now that you say that, yes, it is, and it's going to be like about it's going to like, it's for kids, but it's going to be like honor and dignity, and it's going to be like teaching little lessons, I guess, like that.
Okay.
But the thing I read is that it's made for kids, but there's going to be Easter eggs and stuff in there for the adults. So if you're basically watching it with your kid, that you can be like, hey, cool.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but we'll have to see. I mean, again, it's it might not be for everyone, but it might be, at the very least, it might be pretty to look at, to check it out. So I've just figured it's something they're doing. So I figured we'd talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's like I said, not everything's for us anymore. So this is one of those things, and that's why it's cool that they're doing it for younger kids.
Yeah.
An entry point.
Yeah, well, that's what you need. You got to get these kids. You got everybody started young, or else everything will die. Once we die, it'll die.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, does that wrap us up for Star Wars?
I think so. Then there was just a couple of like general Lucasfilm things.
Yeah. Right.
So what was the first thing? The big news.
Right.
And I and I know this is as big a news as we got, but I was like, this is what we got, basically.
I know, right? Here's
And
a poster.
And a date.
Right. Yeah, I wrote it down. June 30th of 2023.
Yeah.
Right. So I was excited to see the picture. I was excited. So at the end of the Lucasfilm panel, they ran through a bunch of different Star Wars shows and all this. And then they talk about what we're going to talk about next. But then at the end, they said John Williams comes out and he starts playing. They played the Obi Wan theme, and they started out with Duel of the Fates. They had a choir there. That was neat. Then they played Duel of the Fates, but then they brought out Harrison Ford, and he said a few words. I guess he wished John Williams a happy 90th birthday. But anyway, the whole point was he was there, and then John Williams played Indiana Jones, the theme. And they were playing that, and Harrison, I forget exactly what he said, but he had gotten emotional, and he was saying like how basically what a talent John Williams is and all that stuff. And it's just neat to see Harrison Ford at another Star Wars celebration, because I don't think he's been there since when they were doing it for The Force Awakens. Yeah, because that was a big deal. I think that was the first time he'd ever been.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting that he was there, but he wasn't there talking about Star Wars. He was there talking about he only he didn't do anything else. He came out, he talked about Indiana Jones, and he left.
Right. Right. Yeah. Fulfilling his contractual obligation.
So I just thought that was interesting. But it's like, again, we didn't really get. There was no trailer. There was no.
It's I thought there'd be. I mean, I like the poster, but I thought there'd be more. Like I thought we'd get. Here's a teaser. You know what I mean?
That's or a sizzle reel, something.
Yeah, something, right? And I don't think even Harrison. I don't think he even really talked about it. I don't think he talked about it that much. I can't.
No, he was only. I think he was only on stage for like 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. Right. Which is right. So yeah. I guess it's just the beginning of the production, of the promotional stuff for it, but and it's been delayed so long. Maybe they're worried that maybe they're having trouble getting it done or something. Who knows?
I don't know. It was funny because my wife said, she's like, oh, they announced Indiana Jones, and I was like, I'll believe that when I see it. When I see that thing hit theaters, right, I'll believe it's happening.
I know.
I mean, clearly they filmed. I mean, we saw stills. They filmed. I don't know. There's just been so many delays with this thing that it's just.
Yeah.
And then I think this is a perfect. So there's been all these delays. They're finally saying, they finally gave us a date.
Right.
Great. And what do we get? We get a single picture.
Right. Right.
Nothing else. A single picture.
Yeah. I did say, at one point, Kathleen Kennedy was out and talking, and she did say that they would not do basically they wouldn't do an Indiana Jones without Harrison Ford.
Yeah, so I heard her say that.
On one hand, I'm like, great, Indiana Jones is Harrison Ford. That makes sense. But on the flip side, I'm like, but Indiana Jones is pretty cool. Like, wouldn't you want to continue that going forward? And I mean, they make a lot of money for him, so I'm kind of like, maybe that point, maybe between the lines is like, look, if he's not around anymore, then we'll recast him, but as long as he's around, he's our Indiana Jones. Maybe it's something, that's so, or
maybe they they set the stage in that last one to be what's his name before he went crazy?
Yeah, Shia LaBeouf. I guess they could always recast. I mean, if he's a crazy person, they could always recast him and be like, "Oh, it's Indy's son." I mean, it's funny. I don't think I talked about this. So there's a movie out now called. They showed the trailer in front of Doctor Strange. It was It was the other multiverse movie. The cast is all Asian people, and it's the main character is the woman from Star Trek Discovery.
I know who you're talking about.
What was her name?
I can't think of her name, but I know who you're talking about.
Yes. So, but anyway, she's in this movie, and I do know what the trailer I'm talking about is. Do you remember?
I think so. I don't. I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and so she gets.
Well, we
pulled-
saw Doctor Strange together, so if you saw it, I saw it.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So she gets pulled through into all these different multiverse dimensions or something like that. But she in the movie, I think it's her son is played by Short Round.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and I forget his real name. I apologize. But so he's back making movies now. And so I thought that was very interesting that he's back, doing movies and stuff like that. We have an Indiana Jones movie coming out. And I was like, man, I wonder if they bring Short Round back.
That would be funny.
Right.
Well, Short Round's it's not like Short Round's a spring chicken, right?
No, I know, right?
He was like our age. Well, he was a little younger than us.
I don't know if he was, right? Yeah. Here's our new Indiana Jones Short Round.
Right. He's 50.
Right. He comes
the
out
young Indy.
Right.
Oh Lord,
that's pretty funny. So, but anyway, I thought it was interesting that he was back, and I was just like, you made a very good point there. I'm like, I wonder if they would ever try to bring him back and give him his own thing, and then no, he's too old. Film is Short Round broke his hip.
Sure, oh man.
So, well, all right. That's all.
Yeah. So that was the Indiana Jones news, and then the only other thing was this Willow trailer, which I know I've seen this movie. I can't remember anything about it other than that Warwick Davis was in it.
Yeah.
And Val Kilmer.
Yeah. Right.
So I would need to brush up, but I have to say, like I said, I'm not some Willow aficionado or anything, but this looks good. I mean, what I see of it.
Yeah, it looks very well done. I mean, I'm the same boat as you. The only thing I remember about Willow is that I remember being excited to see it, and then when I did see it, I was disappointed. And I don't know if it's because I was expecting Star Wars or if I was expecting, I remember it did have similarities. Like there was like the bad guy had like this skull mask on, and it like almost felt like you're like he's trying to be Darth Vader. And there was like these two little people, like little. I mean, I say not. I don't mean a little person. I mean they were, like
they were tiny. Yeah,
and they would bicker back and forth, and they reminded you of the droids. They reminded you of R2 and 3PO. And so I remember thinking, like, is this, what's he trying to do here? Is it, But all that being said, at the very end, I remember there being some kind of two-headed dragon monster that was pretty cool.
Okay,
that was like the epic battle at the end, and I do remember being like, oh, this is pretty neat. But I keep meaning it's been on Disney Plus since I think they launched the service, but I haven't watched it, and I keep meaning to go back and watch it. So this might be my
this might be a family movie night. We'll just sit down and watch this.
Right.
I mean, I'll check it out. I mean, it's on Disney Plus. The production quality looks really good. I like you. I think I remember going in hoping this was going to be another Star Wars.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is what Lucas is doing after Star Wars, and then it was like, it's not very good.
Yeah, I think it's pretty.
I don't really remember anything about the movie. Like I know I've seen it. I probably have seen it more than once, but not a lot.
It just doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't stick with you.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, for this to be, there's people out there obviously that are fans of it. The Ron Howard's involved. That's to some extent. He was out on stage talking about it.
Yeah, I don't think I certainly didn't remember that Ron Howard directed the first one.
Yeah.
That I didn't remember at all.
Yeah. So I did remember that, but I just remember after he did Solo that people started talking about Willow again. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. John Cadston, who is Lawrence Cadston's son. So Lawrence Cadston wrote Empire, Jedi, Force Awakens, and then he and his son together wrote Solo. And then so his son was interested in it, and I guess he's heavily involved with it now too, because they had him out on the stage as well. So but he was saying he was a big fan of it. I remember when they were interviewing him about Solo, and at one point in Solo, there's like some space dogs that chase Han and Kira. And he said, oh, these were influenced by these dogs, beast things from Willow. And I just remember finding that interesting at the time. And then now here he was a big Willow fan. So I'm like, well, maybe it was just, we just weren't we weren't, I think he's a couple of years younger than us. So maybe he, when we went, we're like, nope, this isn't for me. But he may have been right in that window.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, one of the things I saw, like I said earlier when we were talking before the show, that I had watched a lot of the live shots from Star Wars Celebration, right? Like the stuff that they did, that they posted to YouTube, and usually after the panels, they bring the big names out and they talk to them for like 10 minutes or so.
Right.
And one of the things I saw today was that they brought Kasdan out with Warwick Davis, and then one of the female actresses, I think.
Okay. All right.
I didn't recognize her, but they brought them out and they were kind of talking about it. And he said that, I think he met Warwick Davis for the first time on set of Solo.
Oh, okay.
And they talked about Willow then.
Oh, that's funny.
And he's like, we should do something with this. And then he said it was all like sort of like because then they brought Ron Howard in to replace those directors, and it was these three guys like sitting around like, hey, we should do something for Willow,
Right. Yeah.
And he's like, it was like a perfect story. It was like it was funny, meant to be, like the three, they were all together.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was interesting. So yeah, hey, I'll check it out. I mean, it looks good.
It looks good. I mean, it's interesting because Lucasfilm and Disney too is probably there, and like you figure, they're like, why not give it a shot? It's an existing property, and I mean, we see with Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones now, vastly different audiences, but at the same time, maybe not. You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
right.
We like all this stuff. So anyway, the sword and sorcery fantasy realm, I don't feel like, I mean, Disney has the animation stuff, but I don't feel like they have any, live action stuff in that arena.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Disney's probably going to Lucasfilm and be like, what else you got? Right. Come on, we got this streaming service. We need more. Right? We need content. What else you got?
We'll get with Tucker, A Man in His Dream. We'll get a
prequel,
right?
To Tucker.
It is pretty funny when you look.
That's a
back
deep
on
cut right there.
Yeah, right. But because that used to be, you always followed what Lucas was doing back in the day. After Star Wars, you're like, what's next? And he did Indy, and then it's what I mean, they were mixed, and then you're like, what's next? And I mean, there's only a handful of movies,
Yeah. I remember going to see that Tucker one in the theater.
I know. We probably saw it together for all what I mean. But I do remember it being that. I remember it being a good movie. I mean, it has it's nothing to do with.
I couldn't tell you a thing about it, but I remember seeing it. I mean, and Jeff Bridges was in it. I know that.
Jeff Bridges. Right? I remember the car, and I think the car had the one center headlight that used to turn when the wheel turned. I think I remember that about.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think it's just weird things that you remember about it, but I remember it wasn't. It was a what do you call it when it's about somebody? A documentary or like a bioepic, or I mean? I was like,
right.
I remember being good, and I don't know. Who knows if it holds up? But I remember at the time liking it. So
yeah,
so funny.
Yeah. So
all right.
I don't know. You have anything else? I mean, I think that pretty much covers Celebration and Obi-Wan. I mean, I know we have a whole other bunch of stuff to talk about. We'll have to do it on another show.
Once we get caught up on everything, we have what do we have? Star Trek and Stranger Things, and I feel like there's something I'm missing. But there's a bunch of other stuff. But we figured we would just do Star Wars tonight. Go ahead.
Yeah, I will say briefly, I am caught up on Strange New Worlds. I like it.
Yes.
I really like it, especially this last. I think a episode dropped today or drops tomorrow. I don't know.
I think tomorrow. Right.
Okay.
So the most recent one was with the Gorn.
Yeah, man, that was a good episode.
Yeah, I like that one too. That was really good.
That was a very good episode.
Yeah. This it's very much classic Star Trek. What I mean? Like in a good way. Like I like the episodic stuff, but there's other little character arcs back, going back behind the scenes type of thing. But I'm really enjoying it too. I really like it.
Yeah. So we'll go into more detail on it in next show, hopefully, if 500 other things don't happen.
I know. So we have Stranger Things. I think The Boys drops soon. I think.
You know what? I finally finished season 2 of that.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, that was good.
I know. So I feel like all of a sudden it's just like this massive. I feel like maybe finally everybody from COVID, everybody's catching up. So
I think that's what it is. Right. All that stuff that was delayed last year is all coming out right now.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's about it, I guess.
Yeah. All right. So we thank you for listening tonight. Hope you enjoyed it. And you can follow us on, if you like to enjoy the show, we ask you to go out, leave us a review on iTunes, give us a thumbs up on YouTube if you're watching us on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter. We're at Geek Hangout Pod. We also have a Facebook page and Instagram and all that. So with that, we'll close the show out. So thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next time. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thanks for listening.